People who are darker than blue, don't let us hang around the town and let what others say come true. We're just good for nothing. They all forgive. A boy should grow up. Hey, everybody. Welcome to. I'm muted. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Darker Than Blue. Still muted? All right. How's that? Can we hear me?
Yep,
Fantastic. Today is the day of technical issues. Hey, everybody. This is another episode of Darker Than Blue. It is 5 o'clock on Friday, February 27th. And that means I'm Jackie Lukman, and you are listening, yes, to Darker Than Blue, the show where you just heard Brother Curtis Mayfield say we are talking about politics for the people who he calls are darker than blue. That's me and you, folks. So today is a special show because, excuse me, I just did return from Venezuela. And my family was very, very nervous about me going to Venezuela. This is my second time going to the country, but obviously, there is a reason to be a little bit concerned, although I really wasn't. But I think that kind of speaks to how little we know about other countries and how little we want to find out that people believe that because the United States invaded their country and violently kidnapped the first family, that somehow the entire country is dangerous. No, just the United States is dangerous. Let's be clear, y'all. But I really wanted to make sure that I brought back some conversations and some commentary and some really lovely, I think, video and audio for those of you who are listening on WPFW FM on the radio, but video and audio for those of you who are watching on Black Liberation Media, Lukman Nation Media on YouTube, Instagram, X, I guess, and what's that other platform? Facebook. Yeah. Um, I said last week from Venezuela, I was in Caracas last week, that I would bring you back voices of the Venezuelan people explaining the situation in their country, how they think about it, and what they want. So that is what I have done. So I'm going to stop wasting time talking to you about what I brought back for you. And I'm just going to get into what I have. But first, I want to remind you all, we are in the midst of this winter pledge drive, and I have a goal of $500 for this hour. Now, last week, y'all showed off. I expect nothing less because WPFW has been at this for 49 years. And speaking of fear, WPFW has done this community supported and focused broadcasting with love and not fear for 49 years, despite what has been going on, despite what the government does, despite what the social conditions are. WPFW has been here for 49 years, telling the truth, telling the stories of communities that are not told on corporate media outlets. We have no corporate sponsorship. We do not run ads on WPFW. We programmers, both the music programs and the public affairs programs, we programmers are not paid. We do this because we love what we do. And for us public affairs programmers, we do this because this information is important to convey to our communities because we are at a critical time in the history of this country and maybe even this world. Yeah. So, $500 goal this hour. This is what I am asking of you. We need sustaining members. We need people who have never contributed before to please contribute as a monthly sustaining member. I know that sounds overwhelming, but listen, you can contribute $10 a month And that's $120 a year. And if four people do that, contribute $10 a month, and that comes out to $120 a year, we will have pretty much met our goal. Excuse me, to three people at 100 at 12.50 a month. That's $150 a year. Three people at $12.50 a month. That's less than what you probably pay for your coffee on your way to work most days. $12.50 a month. Three or four people to commit to that, to pledge that, that takes care of that $500. $15 a month. Two to three people takes care of that $500 goal for this hour. And of course, if you hear something that compels you to contribute, of course, we appreciate one time donations. And if you've given before, of course, we're not going to turn away your donation now. We just want to make sure that we have enough people pledging to be sustaining members, providing monthly support to this station and to this show, so that we are secure in the knowledge that we do have this consistent, regular funding keeping us afloat, so that the next pledge drive we do, we can reach out to other listening members of WPFW who have not contributed yet. So please, during this hour, call 202-588-9739 or 1-800-222-9739. You can also text your pledge to the number 801-801 and text the letters WPFWFM, follow the prompts, and make your pledge. You can make your pledge on the website, WPFWFM.org. Please select Darker Than Blue from the drop-down menu and make your pledge that way. You can pledge via Cash App, $WPFWFM. There are so many ways for you to pledge. And yes, you can actually still send in a paper check through snail mail. We take those to go to the website, WPFWFM.org, and get our address to send your pledge in via mail. There are so many ways to support WPFW and Darker Than Blue, to keep us on the air, to keep being a place for you to come and get information from places and people that you are not going to hear from on corporate media. So let's get into what I have for you. Let's see if we can. Here we go. Now, if you're wondering what you're listening to, these are young Venezuelans in the commune called El Canal in Venezuela. They welcomed us with this beautiful dance and music presentation. Listen to this. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like something we've been doing all our lives? Yeah. Now, there's a reason that sounds so familiar for those of us who are Afro-descended, because they are also Afro-descended. We come from the same people. Afro-descended people in Venezuela are there for the same reason we are here. And this is true for many of us throughout the diaspora. That's why it's called the diaspora. So the fact that the people in Venezuela, many of them look like us, have the same DNA as us, come from the same place as us, should not be lost on any of us. So our lack of concern for what the U.S. government does in Venezuela and the rest of the Caribbean and the global South, that is completely misplaced. It makes no sense when we understand that the people being attacked are our relatives. I mean, you should be caring about people being attacked by this government just because they're human beings, but I know how some of us are, and I'm trying to give folks a little bit of grace, so I'm trying to help you get there. Many of the people in Venezuela are Afro descended, as well as indigenous people in Venezuela, and of course, the descendants of some Spaniards. But Venezuela is not a quote unquote white or European country. It is very, very not white. Okay. So let's see what happened when we went to a fishing village, because this all started with the Trump regime claiming that Nicolas Maduro was a narco trafficker, and those fisher people who the US government murdered in the Caribbean were all narco traffickers. Well, we went to a fishing village on the coast in the area where the Caribbean fishers all come and trade their wares and do their job. Let's see what we discovered there. So we have a nice view of the bay
Very
where
happy
the
to be with you
neighborhood
guys. I love
is.
your
And
music.
now you're going to hear Medea
I love the
Benjamin of
messages
Code
of love.
Cake responding to the welcome of the fisher folk that
Oh,
they
the
gave
hearts of
us.
the people of the world united. And just like you, we want peace and not war. Make it not war.
Now, in that video, Medea is saying that we are thankful that you've welcomed us into your community. We love your music. We appreciate the enthusiasm. And then she says, and just like you, we want peace. And you heard the people applaud. These are regular folks in a regular fishing village in Venezuela. They're not government agents, they're not plants, they're just regular people who invited us into their community to see that they really do want peace, and they are not at all what the US government claimed they were. So we had some more conversations about how they carry out their lifestyle and their livelihood in this fishing community. And we learned some very interesting stuff about the way the Venezuelan government helps the working class people in this community. Let's take a listen.
Find some areas that are also pertinent to the fixing of all the motors of the fisher boats. Los compañeros, aparte, a través también del Ministerio de Pesca, han recibido instrucciones, cursos, talleres para aprender a solucionar lo que es la mecánica. Como consecuencia de las acciones que hemos sufrido, bueno, nos hemos fortalecido cada día más porque cada día hemos aprendido un poco más a través de nuestro ministerio y nuestra política de Estado. The fishermen complex have learned, thanks to the Ministry of Popular Power for Agriculture, they have been given instructions and formations on how to fix the motors of the fishing boats. Thanks to the economic sanctions, just like we studied with William Castillo, the necessity of the fishermen to get educated in fixing their own motors has been crucial, and an effort that has been done by the revolution.
I just have to stop that to make sure you heard and understand what they're talking about here. Because of the sanctions that the US government has imposed on Venezuela for years before this attack, the fisher people were not able to purchase parts and materials to fix their boats or their motors. So they had to learn how to fix these things themselves. Well, they don't produce the motors. So they had to go somewhere else or bring some people in to teach them how to do that. They're working class and poor people. They don't have a lot of money. So how did they learn this? The Venezuelan government paid for them to travel to another country. You can guess what the country is. Travel to another country to learn how to fix their own materials and machinery so that they can continue their livelihood. That is incredibly important because in this country, what does the government do to help working class and poor entrepreneurs, business people, communities sustain their communities with their own enterprises? Well, the US government will give you a loan, maybe, maybe, depending on who you are, but there's no loan process here in the Venezuelan situation between the government and the fisherfolk, or even the businesses in the communes, which not going to get into a lot today, but maybe we'll get into it next week. But the Venezuelan government paid for, without any expectation in return other than the knowledge of the fisherfolk to be able to sustain their livelihoods in the face of unrelenting economic sanctions that make it impossible for them to do otherwise, imposed by the United States government. All right. I just want to make sure that we understand that this was not an effort that the fisher people undertook themselves. The Venezuelan government made sure that they were able to get this knowledge so that they could continue their livelihood. So let's hear some more.
Claro, siempre nos vamos fortaleciendo nuestro ministerio poco a poco a través de repuestos, financiamiento, como le hemos enseñado a la Casa de Fond Pesca, nuestro oficina y nuestra tienda, que a través de la política de Estado nos ha brindado de la mano amiga al pescador para ir superando cada día estas adversidades y hoy en día poder nuestras embarcaciones ir llevando esa producción a nuestro pueblo a nivel nacional.
So little by little, thanks to the ministry, and just like you saw in the Fonspeka, the store where the fishermen can get the lower prices for their barks, there has been a friendly hand to help all of the governments and the fishermen to get the necessity of production directly to the people.
Y no es solamente eso, sino a nivel nacional, porque como se ha dado cuenta, hoy en día Venezuela también hemos dado esta batalla en las exportaciones de cada uno de nuestros productos a través de los diferentes compras, con cada una de las producciones.
An important thing from last part is that they also get the repair parts, directly also from the ministry or with lower prices. And now she said that this has been a national effort through the Compass, also for the exportation of the fishing production. As we know, this is one of the efforts that we're doing to combat, well, many things, just like she said, to defeat the adversities of the economic sanctions and diversify the economy of Venezuela.
Just want to stop here to make sure that you understand not only does the Venezuelan government pay for the fisherfolk to get trained in how to fix their motors, when the Venezuelan government is able to purchase parts and additional things that the fisherfolk needs, it purchases them, and then it presents them to the fisherfolk at deeply discounted prices. So no, the government does not pass on the price to the people like the US government has done with the tariffs. Yeah, no, the Venezuelan government really does do everything it can to help its people be self-sustaining in the face of these economic sanctions. And this woman, excuse me, is the second representative for the Union of Fisherfolk in this fishing village in La Guaira. And she was very chatty, very loquacious, and it was hard to keep up with her. But our interpreter and comrade at the Instituto de Simon Bolivar, the Institute, the Simon Bolivar Institute, Christian, has done an excellent job in translating for her. So let's listen to some more.
Dándole gracias a la política de Estado que hoy en día gozamos a través de nuestro presidente y nuestra presidenta encargada y nuestro ministro, tanto por la creación de lo que es los entes adscritos, entre ellos CENIMPA, FONPESCA. Gracias a ellos tenemos estos financiamientos. Poco a poco vamos a ir avanzando y cada día vamos a ir superando. Porque no hablamos de guerra, hablamos de paz, hablamos de producción, hablamos de superar y hablamos de unión. De un pueblo unido con todas las naciones. Siempre tenemos seguro que Venezuela es un país de paz, de amor y de unión.
Always thankful to our president, Nicolás Maduro, the president in charge, Delcy Rodriguez, and also the Ministry of Popular Power for Agriculture, not only to get these parts information, all of the things, but to defeat the adversities, hand in hand with the fishermen, because we're not talking about war. In Venezuela, we talk about peace, we talk about production, we talk about productivity, and that is what we're fighting for here.
Ahorita queremos pasar un área muy importante, que es el área de lo que es la visibilidad solamente del pescador, sino de las mujeres, que somos el rostro al lado de ellos. que somos aquellas que trabajamos día a día para la transformación del producto que llega a cada una de nuestras copas. Siempre y apoya la mano de los equipos de Fronpesca, Ministerio y Colpesca. Vamos a pasar ahorita a un stand donde vamos a demostrar que toda aquella materia prima que traen nuestros frutos del mar, nuestros pescadores, con aquel sacrificio, con aquella lucha, a través de toda esta guerra que hemos sufrido, que hemos dado la batalla y hemos dado el nivel de altura para nuestro pueblo, en la transformación de cada uno de nuestros productos, y de ahí queremos que descubren, y vean y aprueben y definan lo que es la calidad de cada producto de nuestro copa. Les invito a pasar al stand de las mujeres tejiendo redes.
Okay, we're going to visit a very important part where the women are represented, an important part of the fishermen and the fishery production, which is the face of the woman in this place that we're going to visit. Thanks to Fompesca, thanks to CENIP, all of these institutions that help us. So you can have a taste, not only seeing all of the production, but having a taste of the results of that production. An important part of the effort that we're doing through Popular Power.
Yes. So I love how just so excited she is to talk about their work and their relationship with their government and how appreciative they are that their government supports them so much to help them remain not just employed. This is about more than a job. This is a livelihood. This is dignity. This is self-respect. This is humanity. And this is what a government is supposed to do for its people. They recognize this, and they are just humble fisher folk. They're not dignitaries. They're not academics. They're just fisher people. And they have a government that actually supports their livelihood, their community, and their humanity, their self-determination, and their dignity. And the work that they do, the fish that they fish, goes to not just feed their communities, but you'll see in a few minutes, it goes so much farther than that. But wait, let me check on our pledge tally because, what has happened? Friend in Hyattsville, Maryland, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Keep up the good work, Jackie. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And Reverend Art in Philadelphia, I see you, friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Y'all, we're over the goal already, but keep it coming. 202-588-9739. 1-800-222-9739. Sustaining members, $10 a month, $15 a month, $20 a month, $25 a month. One-time donation, whatever you can do to keep WPFW and this show on the air, bringing you the voices of resistance and resilience from people around the world who you will never hear from on corporate media. So let's get back to this really, really great video. I got to tell you, I really loved the time I spent, that we spent in La Guaira. It was so much fun. But here's some more. Let's listen to some more good stuff. All right.
Este es el arte de pesca que se utiliza en Playa Verde, como le estamos explicando. This is the way of fishing that we use here in Ghana. Específicamente con una luz de 6, 7 y 8 pulgadas para la protección de nuestras especies.
So it's the line in the actual thread is specially designed that is chosen to avoid killing the other fish.
The small fish.
Small fish.
¿Para qué? Para proteger su reproducción y que contamos con el equipo a través del ministerio de un equipo llamado CENIP que lleva ese estudio y ese control de manera constante como le vengo explicando a ustedes. ¿Para qué?
So this has been scientifically, established that with this kind of weight and the material that we use, the fish and the baby fish will be protected.
Now, these are, again, regular old fisher folk. They're not scientists, but they know enough to take care of the environment that they're fishing from. They know enough not to overfish, that they worked with a government ministry and academics and scientists to help them develop a particular kind of net that does not harm smaller and baby fish. I have never heard of such a thing. Well, I guess that's weird because it's not like I fish that much, but still, the idea that regular folks are thinking about preserving the environment that sustains them, the relationship they have with the environment, completely different from the relationship that the ruling class has with the environment here and in Europe, because here people understand that the earth sustains them. They don't control the earth, they don't rule it, they're not trying to exploit it, and they're actually not trying to make excessive profit off of it. They are sustaining their lives and their communities with the earth, but they are only taking what they need, and they are preserving the rest for future generations. And the government, again, is supporting them in doing this. Let's listen to some more.
And they work with this institute, this academic institute.
CENIPA, que es adscrito al Ministerio de Pesca.
Centro de Investigación Científica. So it's a center of scientific investigation which is attached to the fishery
Ministry of Popular Power, donde hacen los estudios específicos para la protección del niño. ¿Podemos continuar?
So they do all the research there, fishing, all the small fish
And this is what they create, or some of the products they make from some of the fishing that they do.
Unión para nosotros, siempre ha estado en la mano con el pescador, con apoyo, siempre ha estado en el esfuerzo de nuestros avances. De hecho, parte de nuestro progreso es gracias a la política de Estado que viene nuestro presidente de la mano con nuestra vicepresidenta, que actualmente no presidente. Las mujeres procesadoras hoy en día, por lo menos en el caso de compra de Playa Verde y en el caso de otros compañías, reciben mucho apoyo en cuanto a lo que son sus políticas. Estamos orgullosamente de que siempre ha estado con nuestro pescador. Le demos gracias, seguiremos siendo parte de gracias y sobre todo mantener la paz y la unión en nuestro país.
Now, what she's saying here, for those of you who are listening on the radio, because for those of you who are watching, there are captions on the video, but she is saying here that the women fisher folk in this community are supported by the government. They are involved, the women in the community. Some do go out on the fishing boats. That's why there was one other woman holding one end of the net when this person was explaining this kind of state-of-the-art, environmentally friendly net that they use in commercial fishing. But she is now specifically talking about how the government supports women in taking a big part in this enterprise, so that it's mostly women who do the processing of some of the fish into products that are sold, not just in Venezuela, but are sold in other countries that are not sanctioned by the United States. And we did try some of the products. They are basically, what would you call them? They are, think of like tuna. Like you would make a tuna sandwich, tuna fish sandwich, the canned tuna. Well, they've taken several different kinds of fish and they've created these kinds of spreads from the fish. And one was made of shark, another was made of tuna. But it was like a spicy kind of, in a nice savory sauce. It was really good. And there was a third kind, I can't remember what the name of that fish was, but the shark spread was really, really good. And I'm surprised that I ate it, because I'm kind of weird with the, texture and eating unusual things. But, in the spirit of solidarity and discovery, I put the shark spread in my mouth and it was delicious. It was wonderful. So it was a really great experience in Venezuela. So I'm going to show you the picture of the women.
Siempre dando el ejemplo de lucha, de constancia, siempre igualmente buscando las políticas de Estado en apoyo de nosotros.
And here she is talking about what the women in the fishing village think about Celia Flores. And here, for those of you who are watching on video, you see some of the women involved in this effort to sell some of their products on the market. There they are. Lovely, lovely ladies. And yes, the shark I had been calling it tapenade, but that's not quite it. But the shark spread, absolutely delicious. I would recommend it. So yeah. And aside from the particular products that those particular women produce among a larger group of women, they were just three of the representatives. The fish that the fisher people catch, well, of course, it's sold on the market, and it does a unique thing. It actually brings down the price of other fish sold throughout the country, depending on how much they can export to other regions. If they are able, this fishing community, and this is true of all the fishing communities, if they are able to produce enough product to send to market, their product dictates the price of the rest of the products in the market. Pretty amazing how not capitalism works so well in other countries.
Very similar to what the Panalcomin was explaining. In the way
So we're actually in the store, the fish market in La Guaira, in the fishing village. And this is a picture of all of the beautiful fresh fish, freshly caught earlier that day. Now, you know how people in this country, particularly Christians, and Marco Rubio just said it a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago, and he in Berlin, and he's talking about how at the height of Western colonization, the Iron Curtain of communism pushed back and fell down over all of these countries, and godless communism spread all throughout the world. They always use that descriptor, godless, when they describe communist and socialist societies. Problem is, if you go to those countries, and I know that a lot of us here in this country are too broke to go on vacation in this country, so I know we can't afford to go to another country, certainly not from here. It is cheaper to travel the world from any other country in the world than it is to travel the world from the United States. And that's by design. That's intentional, just like you and I being kept poor so that we can't afford the ticket. Yeah. So it's interesting when you go to other countries, these so-called godless, heathen, communist countries, and meet people who somehow know God. Because on the wall of this fish market in this allegedly godlessly communist country, there's a whole scripture from Proverbs 16:3. What does that scripture say, though? It's very, very important. That scripture says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. That really is in the book. That's a real scripture in the book. So stop telling me these people are godless communists as an excuse for Christians to feel good about bombing other people's countries. That's all that is. That is the reason Christians say that foolishness, to make those of us believers feel okay about this government denying the rights and the right to life of people whose political and social ideology they don't like and don't even understand. But there was more. So, the beautiful fisher people, and you can hear the music in the background, the beautiful fisher people took the delegation members out on their boats and slid around the bay, and they played the beautiful music in the background while people were on the boats. I didn't get on the boat because my knees were killing me, and getting in and out of the boat, that was a bridge too far for these knees. But for those of you who are watching the video on YouTube and Facebook, you can see the boats going out into the bay, and they took a little short circuit around the bay. They didn't go far out, but it was just so lovely that they wanted to make sure that we got a chance to experience what it's like being on their boat as they go out fishing every day. This is a really lovely trip. This was a really lovely section of the trip. You can see in the video how absolutely beautiful this area is. What you probably can't see, but I hope I was able to convey a little bit of it, is how beautiful the people are. Absolutely beautiful, peace loving, welcoming people. Look, people are people, and individuals can be weird, but as a society, Venezuelans are upright people who really do want peace with the rest of the world. And they really are inviting people to come and see for yourself that everything this government here is telling us about them is not true. That's why I brought these videos back. So let's see what else they have to say.
Ezekiel Zamora, urbanism.
Y los venimos a recibir con mucho cariño.
And they come to receive you with lots of love.
Y a darle la bienvenida en nombre de todas nosotras. Ella es una, se puede hablar con
And to welcome you in the name of
bienvenida, ya lo recibí, están en su casa.
Gracias.
So, for those of you who are listening online, we are now, at this point, we are in a neighborhood that is named after Ezekiel Zamora, who is a Venezuelan soldier and leader of the Federalists in the Federal War, or what they call Guerra Federal, of 1859 to 1863. He participated in the 1846 Venezuelan peasant insurrection against the conservative government at that time. He was forced into exile during the March Revolution. That is why he is a national hero, and the neighborhood that we visited in this video is named after him. And the people you are hearing in this video are from the organization, the Circle of Grandmas. The Circle of Grandmothers, which is apparently a thing in Venezuela in these planned communities. They call them urbanisms, where the senior citizens get together. They have their own council, their own organization to make sure that the seniors in these communities, in these urbanisms, are not left alone or not forgotten. Make sure they get exercise, they have social interaction, and of course, we know that keeps us young, right? Yeah. So let's listen to the grandmas a little bit more.
Bueno, bienvenida, bienvenida.
We're all welcoming you.
¿Y qué hace el círculo de abuelos?
El círculo de abuelos lo hicieron y ahora en cada urbanismo los tenemos, en la ciudad los tenemos y se recogen todos los adultos después de 60 años y hacemos juegos, comida, nos sentamos bajo una matica linda y bella y pasamos una hora allí. Ajá. Para que vayan poquito a poquito.
Los círculos de abuelos are a type of organization in every urbanism that makes sure that all the grandmas and grandpas can make activities, join together, sit down in the shade, converse, play games, and all sorts of things to organize within the urbanism.
Y también bailamos. También hacemos excursiones. Y jugamos bingo.
Grandma said we dance, we go on trips, and we
The next time we'll go to New York.
Sí, claro, claro.
They exercise as well.
No, un jueves. Los jueves es sagrado para nosotros.
Okay, Thursdays is sacred for them.
¿En el parque?
Sí, ahorita lo van a ver en la plaza.
You're gonna see it in the plaza of the urbanism.
Saludos. Bienvenido.
Ella es una abuela, puede juntar con
And you can see there one of the buildings in the neighborhood, in the urbanism. And then you see all of the other buildings in the urbanism. And do you know they are building more? There are at least, from, if I'm remembering correctly, 5 or 6 buildings, just like the ones you saw, multi-story, high-rise apartment buildings that, get this, the government gives to the resident. Now, you can't sell the apartment, but the government gives you a place to stay. Yes, you have to pay for utilities and pay a small fee, but we're not talking about like a condo mortgage that we would have to. There's no apartment that's called a condo that people in Venezuela are paying six figures for a mortgage for. That's not happening. Their utility bills are a fraction of what we pay anywhere in this country, especially with these data centers. Are a minuscule portion of what we pay because the government subsidizes much of the delivery of critical services like utilities, electricity, water, for all of its residents. So even people who don't make a lot of money at their jobs are not destitute. There may be poor people in Venezuela, but there's not poverty in that there are masses of people homeless or one paycheck away from homelessness. Right? That is not the situation in Venezuela. So, let's see what's going on inside the courtyard.
Respetando la virtud y honor. Gloria al bravo pueblo que el yugo lanzó. La ley respetando la virtud y honor. Abajo cadenas, abajo cadenas, gritaba el Señor, y el pobre en su choza libertad pidió. A este santo nombre tembló de pavor el vil egoísmo que otra vez triunfó. A este santo nombre tembló de pavor el vil egoísmo que otra vez triunfó. El vil egoísmo.
And that, of course, is the Venezuelan national anthem, sung by one of the members of Ezekiel Zamora urbanism, just one of the tenants. That's it. The people who welcomed us, yes, were a part of tenant organizations, but they weren't government officials. They weren't high-ranking people. They were regular folks already organized in their neighborhoods. And they welcomed us like this. It was beautiful. So here is the important part of this presentation. One of the important parts. The description of what happened on the night of January 3rd. And this is the reason why we went to this particular neighborhood, because the attack happened just over the mountain that is behind this neighborhood. So give this a listen.
Estamos viendo ahí que todavía se pueden ver algunos árboles quemados.
This that we're watching here, and that we can still see some trees burnt.
Justamente ahí atrás estaba la casa del presidente.
Just behind that hill is the house of our president.
Ahí estaba el helicóptero chino posicionado y de ahí bajaron los soldados, los SEAL, a la capturar y a secuestrar al presidente.
There was the Chinook helicopter position, and there the SEALs descended to kidnap our president and first fire.
Navy SEALs.
Mientras tanto, en esta zona, toda esta zona está cubierta por los helicópteros, los Black Hawk y los otros helicópteros estaban posicionados custodiando la operación que se estaba dando en ese lugar.
Meanwhile, the other helicopters were surrounding all over this part of the territory, protecting the helicopter that was doing the operation there.
Aquí en esta zona, aquí podemos ver también las casas. Esas casas estaban o están habitadas por algunas personas que pertenecen al gobierno.
We can see also these houses that are inhabited by some people that are also part of our government.
Bueno, ¿qué cuestión?
Do you have any questions?
So it was absolutely shocking to me to go to this neighborhood and meet all of these beautiful people. And in this video, we are on the roof of one of the buildings, and he's our guide, who is like a community lawyer. He is called a community judge. And this is a position and a role that was also created by the Venezuelan government to give people in local communities the ability and the power to handle their own disputes without relying on the police for things that the police are not needed for. Yeah, that thing that we're trying to do here to provide some other service for people who have disputes or who are having some other type of social problem but who haven't hurt anyone and don't need the police. You don't want to call the police. Well, who else is there? Usually in a lot of our neighborhoods, there is nobody else. There is no other service. There's nobody else to call. In Venezuela, the government makes sure that in all of these planned communities, there is an institution, there is a process for the settlement of local disputes between people that do not involve the police. Imagine.
Well, how many people were injured here in this area? You mentioned 2 people being killed at the
¿Cuánta
checkpoint.
gente vive en
¿Cuánta gente fue herida en esta área?
Porque físicamente no tenemos heridos,
Physically wise, we don't have injury.
pero tenemos muchos niños y mujeres con estrés postraumático.
But we have a lot of people that have post-traumatic stress.
Sí, hay un grupo de psicólogos que vienen todos los jueves.
There's a group of psychologists that come here every Thursday.
Atenderlos, a conversar porque o no quieren venir o no quieren ir a la escuela o no duermen porque cualquier ruido fuerte.
And they attend the community because they don't want to go out or don't want to go to school because any loud sound, anything.
¿Alguna otra pregunta?
Yeah. Well, we understand the loud sounds because we have a member of our delegation who's been in the military that a loud sound and he goes down on the floor and with our delegation.
So the voice you're hearing now is Ann Wright. Ann Wright, a member of UNAC, Code Pink, and a Veterans for Peace, because Ann Wright is a retired U.S. Army general. You can't put nothing over Ann Wright about the U.S. military and what it does and does not do. And you'll see that in a minute because I'm going to have to move this along to show you the other important part of why we went to this delegation. We also went to what is called the Venezuelan Institute of Investigative Sciences. Now, in Spanish, that is called the Instituto de Venezuela de Investigativo Ciencias, with ciencias spelled with a C. So the acronym is IVIC, IVIC. I felt like I had to explain that because when they talk about IVIC in this video that I'm about to play now, you understand what I'm talking about. So this, for those of you who are watching, the images you see are of a part of the Institute for the Venezuelan Institute for Investigative Sciences campus that was bombed by the U.S. government.
When the EVIC was built, there used to function, which still exists, an electrical substation.
Cuando hagamos el recorrido dentro del centro lo van a ver.
When we make the tour inside of the center, you're going to be able to see it.
la red eléctrica viene, por decir, por debajo de la montaña hacia una subestación y va subiendo, y aquí había todo lo que es el ramal de electricidad que suplía a 13 centros de los 22.
So the electrical network went underneath the mountain through substations until here, which was the concentrated space that supported electricity for 13 centers of the EVIC.
Claro, ese día no tuvimos más, esos 13 centros no tuvieron más electricidad.
That day, of course, those 13 centers had no more electricity.
Había una torre que ya no la vemos porque ya mucho escombro se ha removido también.
There's a tower that is no longer visible because much of the
rubble.
The rubble has been removed.
Y además de la torre de electricidad, y estaba la torre de telecomunicaciones, que era el objetivo, estaba esta casa donde estaban muchos servidores y cosas de computación para la red de IBI.
And besides the telecommunications tower and the electrical tower, there was a space that had many of the servers and computers for the EVIC.
Okay. Entonces, claro, como ustedes ven, ya la casa no tiene paredes ni nada, ¿no? Porque la bomba parece que desapareció.
As you can see, the house no longer has any walls or anything because the bomb disappeared it all.
Como ustedes pueden ver acá, si me arriban un poco, van a ver las esquinas de lo que es la metralla, pues, de los misiles, cómo perforaron parte de la pared del centro de matemáticas.
If you can get closer by, you can see all of the leftovers from the bomb and the missiles that perforated the math center.
Now, this location is as you heard, the math center, where they were studying math stuff. That's what they were doing. But this site was bombed because it remained an electrical substation, a power substation, and there was a telecommunications tower, as you saw, for those of you watching on video, the satellite dish. There was a tower next to the satellite dish. The U.S. government destroyed those things ahead of the attack, but I'm going to move this along just a little bit to show you one of the most terrifying things that I certainly didn't expect to learn this here, but we did. So please take a listen.
Bueno, hubiésemos tenido que evacuar a todas las personas en Caracas.
What would have happened if the direct hit was just...
Hold on, let me go back a little bit more. There we go.
There was a different missile launch from a F-35.
Yeah.
The Tomahawks would have either come down.
And that's Anne explaining to me which bombs could have done what, delivered from what source. And we're walking to the edge of this little space. Because,
dear God. Bueno, hubiésemos tenido que evacuar a todas las personas en Caracas.
What would have happened if the direct hit was just half a kilometer more to that side? The evacuation for all of Caracas population would have been needed.
Why? Why would the evacuation of all of Caracas have been needed if the bomb had landed just a few meters away? Because that little white building that you all on the video are watching to the left of the screen through the trees, that is a nuclear reactor. That is a medical grade nuclear reactor. Now, the IVIC uses this for the study of nuclear medicine. That's what that reactor is for. That's why they have it there. But it's a nuclear reactor. And the United States government bombed the site where a nuclear reactor sits in order to kidnap illegally the democratically elected president of Venezuela and his first combatant wife, who U.S. Navy SEALs punched in the face as she demanded that you're not going to take my husband without me. That's one of the reasons they call Celia Flores the first combatant. You don't mess with her. She was the former president of the National Assembly. She was Hugo Chavez's lawyer. So that woman is more than the wife of Nicolas Maduro. That's why they call her first combatant. Put some respect on Celia Flores's name. So, for those of you who are listening on WPFW, and you cannot see this video, I'm inviting you to go to Black Liberation Media after this show airs and see the video, or you can go to my Patreon. It's free on my Patreon. I need you to see this video because I wasn't able to share all of the audio, but there's a lot of commentary and a lot more videos that I will have on my Patreon for people to see of what we heard, saw, and learned in Venezuela. And the one thing I learned from this particular part of this trip, knowing that the US government knew full well that there was a nuclear reactor on a site that they bombed in order to keep the Venezuelan people from defending themselves against this government kidnapping their president. This taught me, as if I didn't already know, but I hope you understand now, that this government, under every administration, really is this depraved. Because the sanctions from every previous administration laid the groundwork for this regime to go this far. We need to understand that we are not only fighting for our liberation from oppression and neoliberalism in this country, we are literally fighting this government for the world, for the safety and the peace of the world. I didn't say it. The revolutionary people of Venezuela and of Cuba and of Iran and of Sudan and Palestine and Congo and the AES and the IAT, all of the people of the world fighting against US and Western imperialism, they're telling you, we have to end this or everyone dies. That's all the time I have for this Darker Than Blue. I have friend in Washington, D.C. to thank also for taking us way far over our goal. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support for WPFW. 49 years of love, not fear. And that's how we have to move for the next 49 years. A luta continua, the struggle continues. But if we keep telling the truth, and if we keep talking to the people who know the truth, Victoria acerta. Victory is certain. Peace. All right, y'all. I'm going to give you a little bit extra tonight. Hold on for a second. Hold on. And I have to apologize because I'm a little bit under the weather because I came back to this hellhole and got a sinus infection. There we go. Hold on. You get me in there. There we go. Got a sinus infection because it's nice and warm in Venezuela. It's tropical. It's beautiful. And it wasn't too hot this time. That was really nice. So I come back to winter and my sinuses have been protesting since I've been back Tuesday night. So excuse me for the snottiness, but that's how it goes. I can say this because we're really not supposed to mention how much people give on the air on WPFW. I'm weird about that anyway, but I just gotta say, 2 people gave over $1,000. And look, I don't think that people are like, oh, Jackie is so wonderful. No, I really do think people really appreciate hearing from the people in the countries that this government keeps telling us hate us. I don't know how else to say how much we need to be in solidarity with people around the world who have been fighting this system. And they're sitting there, inviting us to literally saying, would you all please come and see for yourself that they are lying about us while they are trying to steal our resources, destroy our governments, and kill our people. They're telling us it's our fault because we allegedly hate you. And nothing could be further from the truth. Do they hate this government? Fuck yes. I hate this government. You ought to hate this government. They almost almost caused a nuclear catastrophe in Caracas. We were on that hill, and if you watch the rest of the video, and the rest of the video will be on my Patreon, so you can see the whole thing and all of the other videos that I have and a bunch of other pictures. But when you look to the left on that little ridge, and you see that fucking nuclear reactor right there, and you see where the bomb hit, and Anne Wright does it. She was so great, because she was talking to the man who was speaking was like the director of the center. And they were doing their investigation into what happened, because I didn't realize this, and this was great to learn. They don't automatically respond to what the US does. They gather facts first. So one of the reasons there was no kinetic response from Venezuelans is because of that. That they're not reactionary people. They're not just like, oh, you do something bad to me, I'm gonna hit you back right now. No, they operate on facts. They're very dialectical like that. So they're gathering information, making sure that the missile came from either an aircraft carrier or a ship, a destroyer. That's what it's called, a destroyer, or whether it was dropped by a plane. This is why you kind of heard in the background talk about F-35s and warships, because Anne was trying to explain to them this missile couldn't have come from a helicopter. This missile was only shot from, so that is the utility of having retired and current military members in your anti-imperialist organizations. Only if they are anti-imperialist, of course, but the knowledge they have about how things work on the inside of the beast, extremely important. And then the other reason you didn't see a kinetic response after you watched all those videos being circulated on social media of the Venezuelan people of all ages and backgrounds signing up for a militia, everybody in the country practically was armed and ready to go. Ready to go. Do you understand me? They was ready to go. When they woke up, when the sun broke on January 3rd and the news began covering what happened, everybody who had signed up for the militia got their guns and they was ready to go. But they got the word from on high to stand down. Now, do I agree with such an order? No, not necessarily. Until they explain to us why that order was given. President Maduro had already been kidnapped. The United States had already traumatized. You heard the interpreter talk about how in the Ezekiel Zamora urbanism, there are about 6,000 people there. And you heard the tour guide explain, or the urbanism judge explain, that the children and the women have post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that day, the children were outside playing, but as we were walking through the neighborhood, some of the kids, and they were so cute, some of the kids wanted to say hi, because kids are kids. A bunch of strange people who clearly don't belong there, who have never been there before. And we actually weren't the first delegation they received since January 3rd. We were like the second, and they were about to receive another delegation. So these kids were getting maybe a firsthand experience in seeing delegations, because usually delegations to these countries don't go into every neighborhood unless there is a reason, right? So maybe there had never been a reason to go to Ezekiel Zamora on a delegation before January 3rd, because this particular neighborhood was directly impacted by the kidnapping, the invasion and kidnapping. Because as you could see, it happened right over the mountain from where they were. So we talked to a bunch of kids. All of these little boys were under 12 years old. And they were very shy. They all wanted to say hi, but they were very, very shy. And, we stood there and we talked to them. But they wanted to tell us about what happened that night. And three of these little boys stood there and told us, and I did not video this. I did not capture this on video because it was too private and too precious a moment, and there were children and their parents were not there for me to ask permission to video them. For I don't do that kind of stuff. That's messy. But these little boys, these three little boys, there were maybe 6 of them, and 3 of them told us that they were so afraid that night when the windows were blown into their apartment building. And they woke up and they realized that their fathers were not home. And they began to be afraid, on top of being afraid of what happened, what woke them up, the bombs, the blown in windows, the broken glass all over the place, the fear of their mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers and aunties and uncles and brothers and sisters. But these 3 little boys also woke up amidst that chaos, realizing that their fathers were not at home. Why is that important? Because these 3 little boys' fathers were either members of the Venezuelan military who worked at the base at the entrance of the urbanism that is there to protect the government members who live on the mountain. So 3 of those members of that military unit were killed that night. And one of the little boys' father was a member of the Venezuelan police. And he said, I was afraid for my father because I remember the last time he had to do his job and protect the country. And I was scared for him then. I don't know when that was. But the way I have cried for those damn children since that day, I hate this place. Do you understand me? I hate this government. We have been telling you that these ruling class motherfuckers are a bunch of raping, murdering, cannibalizing bastards for decades. We have been telling you these people ain't shit the whole time. There's a whole book about ruling class slave owners cannibalizing African people, or having fake rituals that represent the cannibalization of people. How they bred a new stock of enslaved people. How do you think they did that? They waited until those little enslaved girls had their first period, and then they raped them. They either raped them themselves or they forced enslaved Black men and boys to rape them. But see, this country didn't pay any attention to what we and indigenous people and our brothers and sisters in the global South have said about Columbus and them Europeans. And the ones that came over here from Britain, they all from the same family. Y'all didn't believe us. And now the pedophile ring is blowing up the world, is trying to blow up the world to keep y'all from finally seeing the truth that we have been telling you the whole time. So if you think these people have never given a damn about our kids, do you understand now? They don't give a fuck about all those kids in Palestine blown to bits and vaporized. Oh, and by the way, about the weapons that were used in Gaza to vaporize people, they think they used one of those weapons in Venezuela because there were bodies. There was, how do I describe? There were remnants on walls and on the ground, but there was no body to be found. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then on top of that, remember the stories about the Havana syndrome, the weird mind sound weapon that the United States claimed Cuba developed and used against American agents? Yeah, that was never a Cuban weapon. That's an American weapon because that was used in Venezuela, not by Cuba, but by the United States government because the Venezuelan soldiers and the surviving Cuban soldiers who were on the security detail describe the very same effects of this sound weapon that the U.S. government agents that lied about it being used against them by Cuba, the exact same thing. So that's the sound weapon that was attributed to this Havana syndrome that Cuba, no, the United States government. That's a US government weapon. And they used it in Venezuela. Yeah. So, I don't know what else to say to people who still have some kind of faith in this government and in the people who prop this government up. I'm not even talking about Trump. I'm not even talking about the Republicans because how are you surprised that they don't care about babies in the US and babies in Venezuela that they're blowing up and babies in Gaza that they're blowing up and babies in Congo that they're forcing to work in mines so that we can have the material for these things. They don't care about babies. And of course, that hypocrisy makes sense in the GOP, but I really need y'all to understand that if the Biden administration had left Venezuela alone, if the Obama administration had left Venezuela and Cuba alone, because remember, it was Obama that issued the declaration several years ago. I can't remember the year. I know one of you will remember the year. It was the Obama administration that first issued this executive order naming Venezuela as a unique threat to the United States. That was the fucking Democrats. Don't tell me they are lesser evil. Because had Obama not done that, yeah, maybe Trump would have issued an executive order saying the same thing. But Obama laid the political and ideological precedent to move the aggression toward Venezuela from rhetoric and sanctions to what Trump has done. I think it was 2014, Goddess. Thank you. Probably, I think it was a 2014. So I don't care. I don't care what anybody feels about what anybody says about the Democratic Party. Fuck you. Fuck you and your genocidal political party. They are just the same as the genocidal ass GOP. They don't care about humanity. They don't care about anybody's babies. They don't care about anybody's lives. They don't care about anybody's self-determination. What this regime is doing is not only reviving the almost dead, lessened, I will say, Monroe Doctrine, but they want to expand it. They want to go back to the era of European domination through colonization. That is what Marco Rubio is talking about. That's what he was talking about in that speech at Berlin. What was it? That economic forum or whatever it was. There's some ruling class bullshit where they get together and tell each other exactly what they're going to do to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world pays them no fucking attention. And then we're all surprised when they do shit like this. And they flat out tell you, no, we are going to recolonize you brown and black motherfuckers. Yes, we are. We're going to take your resources and we're going to kill you if you resist. Because isn't that what colonization was? Isn't that what empire is? Of course it is. And they know what empire is. They know what they're saying. They know what they're doing. It's y'all who are confused thinking that you can appeal to one of these genocidal, murderous, fucking racist parties to do better than the other genocidal, murderous, racist party. At this point, I can't even be too mad at either one of the parties because they've been pretty honest about who they are the whole damn time. Well, at least the past 20 years. I'm pissed off at you. I'm pissed off at all these leftists who sit around bitching and moaning. Well, I don't like this government that it does that. Ain't your fucking business. That's not your business. That's not what self-determination is. When we leftists say we respect self-determination, that's exactly what that shit means. And I actually had to say that at dinner Friday night when we met with Carlos Ron, former ambassador, I think, to the United States from Venezuela. When people from the delegation were kind of criticizing their strategy for elections. Elections aren't due for another 4 or 5 years, I think. Interim President Delcy Rodriguez has to serve out the rest of the term. She was vice president, so it's not like Maduro picked her out of nothing. She was vice president. And she was also I've gotten her confused in a previous interview with Celia Flores, and I've said that Celia is the daughter of a revolutionary. That is not accurate. Delcy Rodriguez is the daughter of a revolutionary who was assassinated by the right-wing opposition in Venezuela. And in her official position in the government, she had to sit in the same room and negotiate with the people who killed her father. And she said she did it as much as it hurt her, as much as she wanted to put her hands around that man's throat. She said she negotiated with him because the people of Venezuela were more important than her rage. What? Y'all ain't got nothing on these people. I don't care what anybody says. Are they perfect? Of course not. Of course not. There are contradictions in every society, and particularly in every colonized society or every society that was previously colonized. Yes, you are going to see vestiges of colonial ideologies like racism, like sexism, like homo and transphobia, because that's what Europeans brought with them, other than fucking disease. They brought with them hate. They brought with them division. They brought with them hierarchy of humanity, which all the while they claimed they were Christians, and ain't none of that in the book. So yes, in formerly colonized societies, or societies that have had a colonial influence in some way, yes, you are going to still see vestiges of those things. But the difference is, just like you see these things in this country for the exact same reasons, in these countries, their governments are actually taking concrete, institutional, systemic steps that include the input of the impacted people in addressing these problems. I'm going to ask the same question that I asked when I went to Cuba and I came back and people were asking me about well, ain't the Cubans racist? What the fuck is this government doing about racism here? Venezuela and Cuba, they're actually confronting the issue head on with the input of the people most impacted by these evil ass ideologies. What's this government doing? Kansas just passed a law that invalidated the driver's licenses of every trans person in the state. Why? Because they say that if your ID doesn't match your sex at birth, then it's not valid. And they just made all of those IDs of trans people invalid with the stroke of a pen. No warning, no grace period, no way for them to get an alternative or another ID, because if your current ID is invalid, what the fuck are you going to use to get another ID? They know what they're doing. They want to make the existence of people they don't like illegal so they can put them in those concentration camps that they are trying to buy, claiming that those warehouses are for immigrants. No, they're not. They're for us. Trying to calm down because my doctors are like, you need to check your blood pressure because we are not giving you another kidney. It is difficult to do this work and not have that passion because you don't do this work without this kind of passion. It's fun to travel to other places other than the whole airport. Oh, God. The only thing I like about airports are the duty frees. That's pretty much the only thing I like about airports. Just to see the different stuff they have representing, whatever country the airport is in the duty free section, because I'm all about that international liquor. I really am. And I got some really, I hope it's delicious, spirits from Curacao, because we transferred planes from Miami to Curacao, and we got the Venezuelan plane from Curacao to Caracas. So I didn't know anything about Curacao. I'd heard of it, but I didn't know anything about Curacao. Imagine my surprise when I find out that Curacao is still basically a colony of the Dutch. What the fuck? So I'm sitting there looking at the stuff in the airport at Curacao, which is very small. Curacao is a little, Caribbean island. It really is like almost a strip of land. Really beautiful. But I'm in the airport and I'm looking at, all the stuff that I think I'm gonna buy, and most of the stuff has Dutch stuff. Little windmills and blue houses and the little clog shoes. I'm not buying that shit. Where's the liquor? Damn it. Because when I travel internationally, I do like to buy gifts for my family. That's just me. I just really like to do that. But ain't nobody getting nothing from Curacao because everything was a representation of the damn colonizers. Why would I do that? And don't tell me that the blue liquor is also from them too, because I'm gonna drink it and I'm gonna share it. Just don't bust my bubble. I'm gonna have it one time in my life just to say that I had it, and then that's it. But in all seriousness, you don't do this kind of work. Um and work is a weird term for it because it's not like I'm getting paid for that. Like that's the other thing. I'm not getting paid for this. Like my organization, thank God, is in a position where we're very frugal with our resources, so we have a little bit to do these kinds of things because we understand how important it is for us to go and see for ourselves, because we can make all these connections we want to in the United States. It's a different thing when we go to the country that is being impacted by US imperialism that we are analyzing and hear from the people impacted exactly how they are impacted and to learn how they are fighting back. Now, in the next show, next week, I believe what I'm going to do is talk more about the communes, because that was pretty fascinating for me. And I like you, I think my knowledge of communes is limited to what we understand about them or what we know about them here, which is very closely tied to like the hippie movement. And I don't mean hippie as a pejorative, I'm just, saying. But there are also what I think what people kind of don't realize is that the kibbutzes in Nazriel, Nazi Israel. That's why I call it that, Nazriel. The kibbutzes are kind of like communes. They are the kibbutzes. I think were created by the so-called progressive or socialist Zionists early in the occupation of Palestine. Yeah, that's a whole bunch of history that I'm gonna have to unpack one day. Um, but I don't think we have a clear understanding of a commune, and we certainly don't have an understanding of a commune in the modern era. um So I think it's important for us to understand how Venezuela does communes, why they do communes, how they operate. Because when we want to talk about entrepreneurship, self sustaining communities, working class and poor people sustaining themselves, and also maintaining a community um, that ensures that the needs of all of the people are met and nobody is left behind, and the things that are created by the commune are also beneficial to the society as a whole. I think looking at Venezuela's communes might be beneficial for our struggles for land back and liberation here. Am I saying they are the answer? No, because I don't know if that's true or not. I just think we're operating, looking for solutions to our problems with no suggestions or possibilities from people who have answered the same problems in different places. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that again, I'm not saying that communes are the answer for us, but I think as anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, internationalist, pan-African revolutionaries, we should look at what our people have done in other countries where their revolutions have established societies based on social equality and progress and economic, what do I want to call it? Economic social equality and egalitarian progress. Maybe that's another way to say socialism that doesn't freak out the weirdos who are still afraid of socialism. I don't know, just a suggestion. But exactly, Patmos Revelator. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. This is what we do this so much in this country, even us leftists and organizers. We never want to, we don't want to read, we don't want to study. So then we come up with what we think are new and better ideas to do revolution, but we don't know what has already been done in revolutions that have happened. So we don't realize that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take some of these suggestions and apply them to what we need to do today with some adjustments and all that kind of stuff. But this is also why we need to read and study history and theory, because we spend a whole lot of time trying to reinvent the wheel when we literally have the blueprint. We have the instructions for everything we need to do and build. It's just a matter of, will it fit for our material conditions? And if it doesn't fit, how do we adjust it so that it does? That's it. That's, us telling people to read and study history. Y'all act like it's a punishment. It's a requirement. It is a requirement to revolution. You don't do a revolution unless you know who you are running out of town and why, and who all of their allies are that you also need to run out of town. And you also pretty much don't have a clear sense of what you want to build on the other side if you don't know what the possibilities are. That these things have been built on the other side of revolution to benefit the people, because these countries like Venezuela and Cuba are still defending what they want. So, I really appreciate you all hanging out with me and watching this show. I really appreciate the interest in hearing from the people in Venezuela. The one thing the Afro descended people wanted me in particular, because I was the only African on the delegation. I was the only African on the delegation. That speaks to a bigger issue on the left in the US, but I don't have time to talk about that right now. But I will one day, because oof. But as the only African on the delegation and the only person on the delegation who raised up all of the countries that are connected to this that I just did for y'all, and who talked about the organization, the Black Alliance for Peace, and our Zone of Peace campaign, and our FIFA in the Move the World Cups, and y'all please don't come to the United States to watch this World Cup mess. They were so interested in what we Africans are doing in the United States, how we are organizing, how we are seeing their struggle. They literally asked me, are you all going to the jail? Are people trying to visit our president? Do they know he has support among the African people in the U.S.? I am not kidding you. And when I'm asked this question, 3 people asked me this question. The third time somebody asked me a question, I texted my national coordinators and asked them, made sure. Now, I know there have been demonstrations that BAP has been involved in at the detention center where President Maduro and first combatant Celia are being held. But because I wanted to make sure, I texted my national coordinators and asked, hey, are we still doing demonstrations at the detention center? They asked me, are we letting their president know that we have his back, that we have their back? And then on top of that, we ended up having the opportunity to meet with Nicolas Maduro's son, who is leading the effort to get his father and I think she's his stepmother back. And sitting in the same room with Nicolas Maduro Jr., I guess. He also asked us, are there any actions going on at the detention center? Do you all know where he is being held? And we're sitting in this meeting. I'm not kidding y'all. We're sitting in this meeting. I had texted my national coordinators, Austin Cole, Erica Kades, and Tunde Asazawa, earlier that day. By the time we get to the meeting with Nicolas Maduro's son, Austin had texted me back with information about the next 2 planned demonstrations at the detention center, which I was able to convey to Nicolas Maduro's son. And he was so thankful to know that events were being planned by serious organizers to let his father and the first combatant know that not only were they not alone, not only do we support them, but we remain in solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution, and we demand that they be returned as well. You don't get to experience something like that because this is a hobby, right? You don't get to do this if this is just something you want to do because you have nothing else in your life. You're either committed to anti-imperialist struggle, anti-colonial struggle, anti-capitalist struggle. You are either committed to national sovereignty, self-determination of a sovereign people, and upholding human dignity and respect. You're either committed to it or this is just something you do on the weekends. And if it's something you do on the weekends, okay, cool. But don't criticize those of us for whom this is not a hobby, but this is our life. So when we go on these delegations, yes, it's fun, it's enjoyable. And even this delegation, for the reason that we went on the delegation, that took a lot of the fun out of it. But these people in Venezuela are so amazing. Even though they're grieving, they are still on high alert. They still love their government. The Bolivarian Revolution stands. There has been no regime change in Venezuela, no change of government. The Bolivarian government stands. And there are things about what is being reported that interim president Delcy Rodriguez is allegedly doing that are also lies. We'll talk about that on the next show. Just honestly do not have enough time to go into it. But just so you be thinking about it for the next week, that amnesty law, you don't understand that. You're being lied to about that. This idea of the Venezuelan government selling oil to Nasria, that's bullshit. And really, you ought to know that was bullshit. But we'll talk about it next week. But even in the midst of their national grief and their national outrage, these wonderful people still made sure that we enjoyed ourselves. They were grieving, they were defiant, but you saw them. You saw them talking about what they do. They didn't have any animosity toward us. There was no nervousness, there was no anxiousness, there was no angst. There was only comradeship, solidarity, and truly genuine human love. That really is what Venezuelan people are. That is what Venezuelans want. They want love and peace with the rest of the world. Cuba, the same thing. Vietnam, China, North Korea, Russia, the AES, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, Palestine, Syria, Iran. People want peace. That is what all people in the world want. All the working class and poor people, I mean. The ruling class that wants to get even richer, if you are rich enough to run and participate in an international child sex trafficking, murder, and cannibalism ring, you don't need no more motherfucking money. You don't need any more fucking money or power if you have enough money and power to do that. And much of the political leadership in most European countries and the corporate leadership in this country are all involved in that shit. Those people, they don't want peace. They want more of what they're already doing. Those are the people who are telling you that people in other countries like Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua and Russia and China and North Korea hate you and hate American values and hate us for our freedom. No, they don't. They hate imperialism. They hate colonialism. They hate U.S. militarism. They hate the lies told about them and their people. They hate the sanctions. They hate U.S. interference in their democratic processes. They hate the U.S. attacking their economy so that they cannot do for their people what they know their people deserve and what they want to do, then to have the U.S. turn around and point at them and say, look, socialism doesn't work. It's a failed state. And a lot of you idiots believe that shit because you won't listen to us when we tell you the reason Venezuela and Cuba suffers economically and cannot develop infrastructurally is because of U.S. aggression and sanctions against the country. But no, y'all still on that communism and socialism is evil bullshit, and you don't have health care. Damn teeth falling out your mouth because you're retired and you have Medicare, but Medicare doesn't cover dental or vision. And I'm talking about myself. I'm not even talking about you. I got to go to the dentist right now, and I can't afford to go to the dentist because I have Medicare, and it doesn't cover dental. So I have to buy a Medigap policy, or find a low cost dentist that's not going to give me laughing gas because I have dental anxiety. Whew. As you can see, this kind of stuff does get me fired up because once you see, number one, that this government not only lies, but lies about everything and lies all the fucking time about other people in other countries, but they are also so hateful and evil that they would risk a nuclear catastrophe in order to get that country's oil. That's what this shit was. It wasn't really about regime change because Trump doesn't care. He just wants the oil. The regime change part is all about Marco Rubio and his desire to destroy Cuba. That's what all this stuff is about. But Trump, once he had a couple tankers of oil, he was like, all right, I'm good. He wants control of the oil. They are negotiating right now, the Trump regime and the Venezuelan interim government. And please understand, and I'm going to end with this. Please don't think of negotiations as capitulation. Because I see that some people are like, oh my God, Delcy Rodriguez is negotiating with the Trump administration. She's turned her back on Maduro and the revolution. No, she has not. No, she has not. You know why? Because Maduro had expected something like this to happen years ago. And he had been preparing his country, his cabinet, his people for a possibility, something like this, but nobody could predict the way it was done. But I mean, these are the people who overturned the attempted coup in 2002 against Hugo Chavez. That was an attempted kidnapping. But see, that was done internally with the external support of the US government. They were expecting something like that to happen again. They were not expecting an invasion with bombs that almost took out a nuclear reactor. Yeah. So once the Venezuelan government realize, after they do their assessment of the situation, and they see how absolutely psychotically reckless. And of course the US government will say, well, we knew it was there, but that's why we use smart bombs. And there is in one video, in the extended video from that evic site, Anne Wright can be heard in the video, in a later part of the video, talking to the director of the evic, telling him, I don't care what anybody says, these bombs aren't smart. It is a miracle or the greatest stroke of luck in the world that bomb did not stray off course, because those bombs aren't smart. They call them that, but they're bombs. And this is Anne Wright, retired U.S. Army general, declaring in no uncertain terms that it was a stroke of crazy luck that kept a nuclear catastrophe from being carried out in Caracas. Because just down that hill, and you couldn't see it really well, but I hope you see it a little bit better when you go look at this video again, or you go to my Patreon and you can see all of the videos, and they'll all be up tomorrow by the end of the day. But I hope you'll be able to see that if you pan to the right, away from the nuclear reactor, and you look down the hill, Caracas is right down the hill. So, I don't know that any memorial was desecrated. We also went to the Cuartel 4F where Chavez is buried, and it's intact, it's fine, it's beautiful. And as a matter of fact, there's a picture of the flags outside of the Quartel 4F that has it's a on the mountainside in the distance. If you look in between the two rows of flags outside of Quartel 4F, you will see, and you have to kind of stand in a perfect position, you will see a Palestinian flag in the mountains, literally on the mountain, in above the neighborhood where that fort is. So yes, the Quartel 4F and Chavez's tomb remain untouched and unharmed. So that's really fantastic. All right, my sinuses are messing up really bad. I'm I'm gonna have to go and snort some what's that stuff called? Whatever it is, the Flonase. That's what it is. Yeah, I got to go snort some Flonase, um, and go to sleep because I really have not slept well since I've been back because I got all this stuff I got to get out of my head. Now that this show is done, I got to finish my article for Black Agenda Report. Go to Black Agenda Radio, where I did an interview with Margaret earlier today, and I'm actually going to drop the link to the interview for you right here, right now. There you go. So you can get a listen to that interview. And next week, I think it will be part 2 of my report back from Venezuela, where we will talk more about communes and a few other very important kind of organizing things that I think are really important for us to know. So, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate y'all. Peace. Because we have to fight for it.